teeth. But he just looks, if I could just get a view of his face, I could show you what I mean, but he's currently watching the other vehicle move past. We'll try shift around one more time. We try, just so I can show Donna. He's got very ripped up ears. It's not a set and steady rule, but for the most part, animals that have a bit more damage, their ears are a bit more ripped up, they start to look a little bit, I suppose the best word is maybe shabby, but it's not really fair. It's just a little bit more careworn after their time spent surviving out here in the wild. Let's try a different approach. Let's try a loop. Let's try a different approach. Here we go. Let's try and get a view from there. Since he has been a bit non-committal, but just his nose, he just looks old. Looks like he's been in the wars just that little bit more. Unfortunately, I think that's the best shot he's going to allow us, which is fair enough, I suppose. It is his choice entirely, and I don't want to shift around too much. And whilst we've been investigating this herd of Duggar boys and finding some interesting things about them, Scott has been out and about in Arathusa looking for the Salala pride. So let's head across to him and see if he's had any luck, and I'll catch up with you a little bit later.
Hello everyone, and it didn't take long for our three-man team this afternoon to track down these lions. It was the same team that I was with this morning, the new cameraman Tebs. It's great to have him on board. And Jean-Andre, who a lot of you will know, are sitting behind me, and Tebs is behind the camera. In front of me, you've probably already seen 4 lions. They are members of the Salala pride. We actually spent a lot of time with them this morning. They were in the same area. They've just shifted ever so slightly in search of shade as the sun has moved over onto the western horizon. And take a closer look. They're asleep for now, but we decided to come here with the hope that maybe, because there's not much water around at the moment, that there may be some potential prey that make the mistake of coming to Red Dam, which is a little pond off to our left, for a drink. If they do, of course, these lions will certainly wake up, and despite being fairly full of buffalo at the moment, they'll most certainly try their best to acquire their next meal. It's also not the warmest afternoon. Surprisingly cool actually for this time of the year. You'll notice the trees blowing in the wind in the background. That gives you an idea of exactly how strong the wind is, and that's helping to keep us cool. And another one that Tebs is moving across to show you now. So that's 2 of the 3 young males within this pride that you've seen. And I'm not too sure exactly how old they are, but I'm guessing about 1.5 to 2 years of age. This one that we're looking at here seems to be the most awake and alert. I was thinking about it, but you saw his head just kind of rocking forward there. You'll also notice as Teb zooms in, they're a little bit moth-eaten. They've been through quite a rough road over the last. And this morning is the first time that I actually got to see these lions. And it was a result of the 2 Matimba males who were kicked out of this territory by the 5 Birmingham males. And when those 2 Matimba males arrived in the southern reaches of the Sabi Sands, this pride fled from them. And they will probably continue to flee for quite some time. They are certainly not safe where they are here. The Birmingham boys or the Matimba males, but also the Nkuhuma pride. So they've got their work cut out for them. And along the way, oh, there you can see some guests enjoying this wonderful sighting as Tebs flashed past. You'll also notice the interesting thing with this pride is that there's a lioness who's missing her tail. And she's the one that is lying with her back towards us. Quite bizarre. And interestingly enough, I would have seen this lioness when she was young, just a couple of years old. She's 9 years old now, I'm told. And where I used to work in the southern Sabi Sands, I used to view this pride and her mother and aunts and her mother, possibly her mother, maybe not definitely her mother, but I'm told that it could well be her mother, that also lost her tail. Now, I'm not sure what this one lost her tail to, but I know her mother lost her tail in a skirmish with hyena. But quite incredible that the same pride of lion is almost gathering this trait of losing tails. Oh, we've got some good news. One of the lions has popped up, and he's on a now there's 3 young males, like I was saying, then the older lioness without the tail. There's also another lioness that we'll show you a little bit later, but it looks like all 3 of the young males as well as the young, like I was saying, then the older lioness without the tail. There's also another lioness that we'll show you a little bit later, but it looks like all 3 of the young males as well as the young lioness are all part of the same kind of crop, from the same origin, or the same time of year they were probably born. They all look very similar in age. And they're the last 2 members. So I'm told there's actually supposed to be 6 members in this pride. There's 1 lioness who's not around, and I'm not too sure exactly where she is or when she was last seen. For those of you who are joining the safari for your first time, for 2 weeks, I've kind of lost track a little bit of what's. And thank you very, very much to all of the very, very kind welcome backs. There were a lot this morning, and it sounds like a lot more this afternoon. Thank you enough. It's so good to be back on safari with all of you. And Genevieve made a comment that the bird man of Djuma is back. And thanks for that, Genevieve. I will certainly be searching for some more birds for you. I noticed that the European bee-eaters have moved into town while I was away, so I'll hopefully be able to try and show you some of those. There was a massive flock flying around the woodlands kingfishers have not arrived yet, and I think they're a little bit late, but I'm going to have to get out my diary and work out when they arrived last year. But that's another great bird that we can look forward to seeing in the coming weeks. Well, excuse me everyone, I'm just leaning back for a moment because Jean-Dre has just handed me a wonderful, wonderful surprise here. And you are in for a treat if it doesn't fly away. Look at how awesome this is. It's a longhorn beetle with the most incredible markings. There are many, many different types of longhorn beetles. Oops, sorry buddy. I'm just going to leave him on the dash to do his own thing. Oh, there he goes. But what a good sighting that was. Thanks, Jean-Dre. And he just tapped me on the shoulder and handed me this little gift, which was a longhorn beetle. Jean-Dre, and he just tapped me on the shoulder and handed me this little gift, which was a longhorn beetle. I'm not too sure exactly which type of longhorn beetle that was. I don't recognize it. I don't think I've actually seen that one before, but I'll be sure to get out my insect book, or maybe some of you guys would like to try and work out exactly which one that one was. And maybe what we can also do is maybe the girls in the final control room can maybe put together a little slow motion clip of it opening up its wings and flying off. So maybe that's something we can look forward to seeing. Oh, well, what a surprise. Thanks, Chandra. I forgot completely what I was talking about. Oh, about migratory birds. So, yeah, there should be a lot more migratory birds moving into the area. Not only the woodlands kingfisher, quite a few of them will only arrive in the later months going into the summer, whereas some have already arrived. But the interesting thing to know is that our bird population actually doubles in our summer months, all with migratory birds, a lot from Africa, but a lot from further north of that, Europe and Asia. So really looking forward to seeing some more birds with all of you guys. We were studying the sandpiper, this morning at this little waterhole. They're quite difficult to distinguish. Seen it bobbing about here this afternoon, but there are a lot of wonderful birds out at the moment, and we'll be certainly keeping a close eye out for any of them. Now, the kind of problem we have now is I'm not too sure whether we should stay here for much longer taking a closer look at these lion, or whether we should head off in search of something else. So maybe you guys can send through your thoughts. My intentions would obviously be to come back a little bit later, but if we don't come back, I mean, of course, if we don't leave now, well, then we don't need to come back later. It's always a gamble. Something could come down and drink, as I said a little bit earlier, and that means they could get up earlier than expected, or we could probably could be in for a long wait until around 6 down. And he sent it through on Twitter. If you are joining for the first time, it is a live safari. You can send us through questions, hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, and questions@wildearth.tv on email. Now, Kevin's interested to know, have we any idea of when exactly this lioness lost her tail? And I certainly don't. It doesn't look fresh to me, so I'd say at least 6 months to a year ago. Few more guests arriving now. The other vehicles moved off, and it must be said that the experience privileged enough to be able to sit and wait and watch these wonderful sightings, but we're also privileged enough to very occasionally watch a slow motion highlight for something like that longhorn beetle taking off. I wish I was watching it right now with you. I'm only, but enjoy the clip, and I'll see you when it's done. There are many different types of longhorn beetles. Oops, sorry buddy. I'm just going to leave him on the dash to do his own thing. Oh, there he goes. Welcome back, and I'm sure you enjoyed that. It's always quite interesting actually how a lot of the bugs have to open up their wings before taking off. And I'm sure some of you are busy researching, trying to work out exactly which longhorn beetle that was. It's a tough business, the insect world. There are just so many different types that to know all of them you have to be an absolute genius. But again, with so many people on safari with us, somebody is bound to have either the knowledge or the willpower to work out some of these strange things that we get to see, and we can't thank you enough for all your help you give us. You'll hear a Cape turtle dove calling in the distance. Which is a wonderful call of Africa. It's one that I always miss when I'm away. A very widespread bird that you get through most parts of South Africa. what I'm thinking of doing also a little bit later, and please remind me to try and see if there's a scops owl, an African scops owl. We had a great view of one this morning. Just on the other side of these lines, we can't see the tree that they were in from where we are. But I know a lot of you have been desperately urging us on to try and see the African scops owl, but a tiny little image though, but you'll get an idea. And as Tebs zooms in, I'll point out at first the white-faced scops owl, which we do get in this area, and then secondly the African scops owl. So this is the one that we saw this morning, and it's also the one that lets out that call every 4 or 5 seconds. So both areas. Okay, so that's good. Now, my predictions for what is going to happen here is, like I said a little bit earlier, these lions will probably only start getting active at around 6 o'clock. So it's quite a long wait. That is, of course, unless some potential prey move into the area. Always a gamble what to do, whether to sit or wait, or to move off and come back a little bit later when it's more likely for them to be active. So do send through your thoughts if any of you are feeling lucky or know of a herd of Nyala or buffalo on their way to drink here, then let us know. If not, we'll probably head off and see what else is happening. It's also quite nice after being away for a couple of weeks just to drive around, go and have a look at Arathusa Waterhole, see how much the water levels dropped. I haven't got to nearly all exploring. Also always interesting to see just how much the vegetation's changed and the little changes that do occur even in short spaces of time, like a 2-week period. Well, a huge thank you to Crystal in California for updating us that this lioness lost her tail 4 years ago in 2011. And not only that, but lost her tail the same way that her mother lost the tail to hyena. So maybe that through the clan, and then that same unlucky pride of lion had another member with that unfortunate fate. I remember her mother was in incredibly good condition. She was a really big lioness, and the fact that she didn't have a tail didn't appear to interfere with her health or well-being. A very big smile on my face when we get to chat to some of our younger viewers, Isabella, aged 4, and Matty, who's about 9 years old. They're both watching, and good to have you guys on safari with us. I've missed you guys, and I hope everything's well back home. Now, Isabella is interested to know whether the lions ever get sand in their eyes when they're sleeping on the ground like this, and usually not, Isabella. So their head's a little bit off the ground or their eyes are closed, so it's usually not sand that causes trouble in their eyes. But something that does happen to lion is when they're walking through long grass with tiny little seeds growing off the edge of the grass. Those little grass seeds can sometimes get into the lion's as easy for them. Their big toes and claws make it a little bit more tricky to get little things like grass seeds out. Our fingers are a bit better at doing that, but usually the sand doesn't bother them too much, and if anything it keeps them nice and cool in the shade where they're lying now. Even though it's not very hot, I guess they've got a big coats of fur on them, so it's going to be a little bit warmer for them than it is for us right now, and that's why they're enjoying lying up in the shade. Happy to know you guys are watching, and we're going to race you back over to Jamie. She's found it.
Deep in the bushes, believe it or not, there is a little male bushbuck staring back at us. He was very comfortably out in the open. I think he made Let's see. Can you see the outline there? An ear just moved. Looking for just that little bit of a twitch in the top of the middle of your screen. There are the horns. There you go. You must be able to see it by now. And just bear with me a moment, because I think if I shift, he's going to run away. But I think if we sit here, he might be tempted to come out a little bit more into the open. He's nibbling on the buffalo thorn leaves, which are nice and fresh and green, and very refreshing in taste. For something like lettuce in a salad, or maybe even baby spinach. Come on, bushbuck. What was his name again, Vin? One male?
I don't remember.
No, me neither. There we go, here we go. Striking little dots on his bottom as he picks his way oh so delicately through the bushes, and try and shift backwards a little bit. But I love watching the way that they move. Things like bushbuck and nyala and kudu, animals that are entirely suited to these incredibly thick habitats that we see them around, these thick bases around drainage lines. Where did you go, mister? I can see you. I can still see you, but of bushbuck horns. About all we can see, but I'm quite impressed with his size. And anyway, as I said, I love watching them move through these thick vegetation habitats that they live in. They seem to do it so effortlessly without even looking. There's some peripheral sense that tells them when to lift their legs up over a log. Look how he disappears. We are maybe 15 meters at the most away from him. You would never ever know that he was there if we hadn't just seen him nice and... Quick link to something that we don't get to see all that often. There's not that many bushbuck wandering around, but I know that Scott is still out and about, so let's head back across to him. And I will be traversing around Duma and looking out for anything else we might find. See you in a little bit.
So, I think it's going to be our best option to head off and stay in this general area, but drive around and see what else is going on out here. Like I said a bit earlier, these lions are probably not going to be up to too much for the next while, and I think it's worth us taking the risk of going elsewhere. And we've just got through an update from Kathleen. Thanks, Kathleen. Saying that there's a huge herd of waterbuck at the Arathusa Waterhole. And not only that, but there's also a tiny new baby hippo that lives there. So it's going to be a worthwhile adventure to head across there and see what's going on. Oh, sorry guys. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, maybe let me go this way. Sorry, we've got ourselves into an unlucky traffic jam here. But I'll be able to squeeze through this little gap. Thank you, everyone. Sorry about the traffic jam. Listen, okay. So we're not too far away from the Arathusa Waterhole, and I'm just going to get on the radio quickly and just mention to everyone that I'm leaving this sighting so that they know. Anybody else who may be wanting to make their way there as a third vehicle can now do that. Leaving 2 stations with the Salalas at bed down. And Terry and Liz and Carol, if my memory serves me correctly, and they're out all the way from America and Canada on safari. They've already been on safari for about 9 days. Have had absolutely wonderful viewing so far, and have still got another 3 nights at Juma and a couple of nights elsewhere thereafter. So they're enjoying being out in Africa. A couple of them have been before, the others haven't. But always wonderful to meet some of the viewers, so be sure to get a hold of us in advance and get to meet you in person. And always a relief to hear that people who've traveled so many thousands of miles to come on safari are having a good time and also having good luck, because for those of you who are new to the safari experience, luck plays a very important role on what you see and the quality of your sightings. And they've been incredibly lucky thus far. A lot of you may have wondered what that funny cement circle was that we drove past, so we'll get Tebs to just zoom across onto it for you. That's our shadow. And what happens while you're out on safari, sorry if some of you are getting dizzy, I promise you it's the last time I'll do this. But what happens is you have bush dinners. And basically, you come out into the bush on safari, after your safari, and the camps may have set up a beautiful dinner for you, and they've obviously got a roaring fire in that big concrete pit. So that's what that is used for. Just going to hop out quickly and remove this branch. Oh, my earpiece has fallen out, which I've just noticed. The silver cluster leaf, it's not a very hard wood, so even though it looks like quite a big branch, it's not very heavy. And I'm not sure what the elephant would have been doing, but I could see some elephant tracks here, and it may have moved this branch. Okay, now my earpiece is back in. For your research on the longhorn beetle that we got a glimpse of earlier. Sadly though, William says there are just so many longhorn beetles inside. He thinks it could be just yet, but he is still searching and trying, so thank you so much. And wasn't it such an awesome little bug? You get one that's a bright metallic green color that I hope we find in the coming weeks. Really awesome. You saw is probably about an inch long maybe, whereas others are as big as 2 inches, so they can be quite large. Always very easy to kind of distinguish because they do have those characteristic long antennae. I'm not sure who's spreading the word about safaris in New Zealand, but whoever you are, thank you, because there seem to be a lot more New Zealanders tuned in. And Rochelle, you one of them. Good to have you on board, and thanks for sending your question through. I'm guessing that you are new or of the people sitting up on the bonnets, as we call it here, or the hood, as you may call it in a lot of other countries, of the vehicle. And those are the trackers, a vital part of the team who help take people on safari. It's certainly not just the guides who have their work cut out for them sitting in the driver's seat, but also the trackers who actually focus on trying to find animals by searching, and also searching for their tracks on the road, because they've got a good vantage point of the road from where they're sitting. They're in an easier position to spot the tracks. They also don't have to continually talk to the guests, and they've got a little bit of distance between them. The guide usually does all the talking, and the tracker generally remains fairly quiet on the front of the vehicle, focusing on listening, looking, and finding tracks. Once the tracker's found tracks, the guide will then often drop them off with a handheld radio and possibly loop around to wherever the tracker suggests he goes and checks for tracks. And it makes for a wonderful experience having a tracker on the safari experience. So that's what those guys are doing up there. Rochelle, the art of tracking is an incredibly awesome one, and the Sabi Sands has got some of the best trackers in the world, without a doubt. The local Tsonga people of this area have spent their lives growing up in very similar surroundings and seem to have an eye or a knack for finding the animals simply by following their footprints. A sandy road like this can be fairly easy, but as soon as they veer off into the bush, it becomes incredibly tricky. Good to have you on safari with us, Rochelle. And again, thanks. Good to have you on safari with us, Rochelle. And again, thanks for sending that question through. You must have been wondering, what on earth are those? I must say a very, very big thank you to everyone who's sending through questions and comments. Pamela has now sent through a question on Twitter, and she's interested to know a little bit more about the bush dinners that happen out here, and whether or not lion or leopard, or I guess any other dangerous animals have ever stumbled upon them. They're on a pathway from one area to another, and you find yourself in the middle of that pathway. They usually don't come in too inquisitively to look, and to be honest, they're usually not even that interested in us. They just want to move by. But I've had all 5 members of the Big Five stumble upon various bush dinners, sometimes a little bit more hair-raising than others. And some of our viewers will even remember it wasn't quite a bush dinner, but we had a fire out in the bush. It was for Big Cat Week last year, and it was probably early December or late November last year, where we had set up a beautiful big campfire. Hayden Turner, one of the other presenters, was sitting on a log with the fire in front of him. A young male leopard called Kunyuma, and that same male leopard left the bush where Peter was following him, and Peter followed him all the way to the campfire. Well, not right to the campfire, about 40 or 50 meters away, and then the leopard climbed up a marula tree, and it was perfectly in shot directly behind where Hayden was sitting. So just the most remarkable luck, and it lay there for quite some time, I think, before it came down the tree. But some strange things do happen out here. Pamela, thankfully though, the animals out here typically don't want to harm us, and they usually don't cause too much trouble, but it certainly does make your heart start racing. I remember working at a camp in southern Tanzania in an incredible wilderness area called Katavi National Park, spelled Katavi, if any of you are interested in looking it up. And at this camp, it was a semi-permanent camp that was only open during the dry season. We just had 6 little tents and a maximum of 12 guests that would come there. But the camp was built underneath beautiful, beautiful big trees called tamarind trees. And the fruits from these tamarind trees are irresistible to elephants. And at this time of the year, when we were setting up the camp and for the first few months of it being operational, the tamarinds were dropping their fruits all over this little camp, where on top of the tents, in and around the tents, and almost every single time we needed to get from one room to another after dinner, between meals, I had to almost dodge with the guests, like running from one tent to another, then back to another tent, because the elephants in that area were quite hostile. There's sadly still quite a lot of poaching up in Tanzania, and it was a gauntlet almost on a daily basis. Once you were in your tent, it was actually perfect, because then they would come up to it and start scraping the fruits off the roof of your tent with their trunk, which was wonderful, but getting to your tent often proved problematic. Happy to hear that there's a whole classroom full of kids in Missouri whose teacher's Mrs. Patos, questions about. I think yesterday was lion, and today they're on the topic of elephants, and would like to know, how long do elephants live for? It's a good question and an interesting answer, because they live longer than any of the other large mammals in this area. Up to about 60 years would be the average life. Quite as big as the elephant would only be around 20 years. And hopefully it won't take us too long to actually find you some elephants to look at. And hopefully it won't take us too long to actually find you some elephants to look at. I did see some elephant tracks coming down towards the Waterhole, obviously from earlier today. And who knows, maybe another herd will arrive a little bit later. And thanks to your teacher for letting you watch the safari. Now, if we take a closer look up ahead, there's some geese in the water. And I'm very interested to do a head count, because before I went on leave, these were tiny little goslings. 2, 3, 4. Hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are still 7. These Egyptian geese parents have been doing an incredible job looking after their chicks, because for all 7 of them to still be alive is an incredible feat. So many different animals, incredible feat. So many different animals will prey on them, monitor lizards, birds of prey. Saw them, they were probably about a quarter of the size as they are now. There's a few other birds just to the left of the Egyptian geese that I'd also like to show you. There's a few other birds just to the left of the Egyptian geese that I'd also like to show you. And these are and interestingly enough, the parenting of this bird is done only by the male. He incubates the eggs, cares for the chicks, and the female runs off, mates with another male, and with a little blue coloration on the top of his beak. And the youngster is just behind him to the left. Shots. Some that have 2 parents that have shots. Some that have 2 parents that raise them, and another one with just one. What I'm going to do is get my book out quickly and just show you a closer picture of birds, and from there, not too easy to see. There we go, right in the middle here. Great. They've got massive long toes which help them essentially walk on water and disperse their body weight. Look at how awesome this one is up here, the greater painted snipe. Look at how awesome this one is up here, the greater painted snipe. I've never seen one before, they're incredibly rare. And also the African snipe, which I have seen, but very rarely. At the moment due to the very dry conditions, but they like kind of seasonal swamps and marshes, and we'll be keeping an eye out at least a lot more rain. Good. Well, now we're gonna move off. Good. Well, now we're gonna move off and I've been keeping an eye out on some hippo. There are the backs of 2 hippo poking out of the water to our left. I haven't managed to see a tiny baby of this newborn hippo. I'm not too sure how old it is exactly. I think I can see it. It's with the ones on the right there, Tebs. That's the mother we can hear calling. So if you zoom into the one on the right, Tebs, look closely, you may be able to see the little baby porpoising like a little dolphin. It probably won't be able to stand where its mother's standing, so it's going to be jumping up using its back legs to get to the surface in order to be able to breathe. There it is, poops, and back down. Awesome. Now let's see if it makes this noise again. That's me doing it, but that's the noise you need to look out for. Oh, and it looks like another hippo's coming to greet them. I wonder why the mother's getting so worked up. She seems to be moving around with quite a lot of intent. Look at how cute the little baby is there, just poking its head out. It's tiny. What are you eating? You aren't supposed to be eating anything in here. You eat grass, Mom. Maybe it's just some kind of a display. I'm not sure if any of you saw that, but she appeared to take in a mouthful of this. Oh, be careful you don't swallow. What it's doing. Like I said, so not too sure exactly what that was all about, but so happy that we're getting a few glimpses of her and her youngster. There don't seem to be nearly as many hippo here as there used to be. Or, though maybe that's just me not being able to see them very clearly. I think there are a few hidden under the beds of reeds and are just poking their nostrils up every few seconds to take a drink. But as the water begins to dry up here and well as food moves off, they may find that hippos that used to stay here have decided to try and find a better home until more rain arrives. Well, thanks very much. It's great that she's... Well, thanks very much for the updates that you've been sending through, saying that this female does tend to be quite aggressive towards other hippo who come too close to her calf, and rightfully so. She needs to take great care of it. And look at how small it is. If she goes any further out the water, it might follow her, and then we'll get some incredible views. Now we'll get some tough drought conditions, and the fact that she is busy nursing a calf is forcing her to feed on some rather abstract delicacies. What is going to happen here? Please, can she go? What is going to happen here? Please, can she go further out the water? Because I'm almost certain the calf will follow her. Come on. Yes, keep going. Wow. wonderful. Can you believe how much smaller it is than her? It's tiny. Oh, plumps. And then she just plopped herself back down again. But who knows, maybe the mother will get back up, or the calf will run around in front of her, giving us a better view. Only 10 days old, an incredibly new addition. And I'm guessing there's a big thanks to the Arethusa Waterhole camera for helping provide us with that information. I'm not sure how else exactly they would have worked out that there was this new addition if they weren't monitoring their post so closely. There's the youngster that has just popped out onto the other side of its mother. Let's just take one little second before we send you across to Jamie. There we go. Look at the one hippo there. It may continue. Oh, look there. It's swiveling around and rolling about completely upside down. And it's a bizarre thing that hippo do occasionally do. Obviously just playing about, enjoying wallowing in the water. There was one hippo that I remember in the southern side we sent work. It would perform this rolling action for you, but I've yet to ever find one that does it as frequently. Let's see if it does it again. Yep, another roll. Look at the little calf's also getting a bit excited. It's all happening here with the hippos. Thankfully, we are not in a rush to get you across to Jamie. She is just wanting to, I think, test your guys' skills on some tracks. So, start thinking. I think now that the hippos seem to have temporarily calm down, it would be a good time for us to send you across to Jamie for your tracking quiz, and we'll be waiting right here for your return.
Welcome back, and I really don't want to take you away from your hippo sighting for too long. I also have to shout over the sound of the wind, but I have a track quiz for you all, and I want to see if you can get this one right. I've got two tracks for you. One is here, what has made this, and this. Know the animal that has made both of these tracks. Which animal? I want to know which body part it has come from. And of course, if you have just joined us and you think that you might know the answer, you can send your answers through to #Safari at wildearth.tv. Now, I really didn't want to take you away from Scott and his hippos for too much longer. Just wanted to pose that as an interesting question before moving on through Djuma. So let's head back across to Scott and his entertaining hippos, and I will be back with you a little bit later. Well, interestingly enough, oh, look at the little baby.
really gave her mother a big nudge there. But the one hippo in the middle of the screen was also kind of playing around with all this aquatic plant matter in its mouth. So, not too sure what to read into it, but interesting that this other hippo was also kind of tossing this weed around in its mouth. Let's see if this young hippo calf doesn't give its mother a little bit more of a hard time. Maybe it's wanting to suckle, I'm not too sure, but it really did jump up into its mother's face saying, "Come on, Mom." But she didn't seem to take too much heed of that. Now, earlier on I said I'm not too sure how many hippo have actually always lived here, but I seem to think that there are less than normal. And Rochelle in New Zealand is interested to know exactly how many could be here. Well, it's the mother and the calf that we can see. Then the one in the foreground, or kind of in the center of the screen. Another one next to it that's just poked its head up. Another one to the right thereof. Then one off to the left there. So where are we now? I haven't even been counting. That's 4, 5, 6. So there's about 6 or 7, I'm guessing, but I think there were maybe about 10, 11 or 12 a few weeks ago. But I'm sure some of our other viewers may have been keeping closer tabs than me on these hippos. So if any of you know the exact numbers of this pod or raft of hippos, depending on your preferences, either can be used as collective nouns, please let us know. But it looks like 6 or 7 for the time being. Good afternoon to Deb in Ohio, and you've asked a question that I'm not going to be answering. The one hippo is doing another spinning roll there, and she's interested to know 2 things. How long will a hippo calf nurse for? And also, can they nurse underwater? Now, that is a good question, Deb, and I've heard mixed things on it. I've heard some people say that they can nurse underwater. I find that hard to believe. With the structure of their mouth and the size of their mothers, I just don't see how they'd be able to nurse underwater without slurping in massive amounts of water along with their milk. But I have heard that they can. I just am battling to convince myself into believing that. How long exactly they'll nurse for, I'm not too sure, but I'm guessing my hippo filing cabinet has been rusted closed, and I need to know more concise facts about how long hippos will nurse their young for and whether they can actually nurse them underwater. Please let me know, and I'll share it with everyone else who's on safari with us. One thing I do know is the answer to Donna's question, and she sent through a question on Twitter. Hello, Donna. She would like to know, will they go out onto land after dark? And yes, both the adults and the young calves will go out and feed around the waterhole at night. Obviously this mother is in a tricky scenario because she's not going to want to take this young calf too far away from the water. so she's going to be forced to stay nearby, which probably isn't ideal for her grazing, but it is important for her calf's well-being. But the calf will come out on these little foraging missions with her at night time, and as it gets older, I'm sure they'll start to move further and further afield. Big thanks again to Deb, who's updated us that the mother was grazing on the lawn in and around Arethusa, the camp that is just in the background of where we're viewing now. And while the mother was grazing, the calf was taking little naps nearby. That must have been really cute to watch. Okay, I'm just going to reposition now, get us a little bit closer to the large herd of Waterbuck, and then probably start thinking of heading back towards the Salala Pride of Lion. Well, I have just got some confirmation through from Tara, thank you very much, who's sitting in the final control room, and they nurse for up to around 8 months, so nurse underwater, which I did say I'm battling to believe. And even though, just like the adults, the young calves can close their nostrils, flap their ears back to prevent water going in their nose, with that big mouth, I just don't understand how they manage to latch on can move, but obviously there's a way that it somehow creates a suction. Isn't that incredible though? You would never think that they would be able to, well, I would never think that they'd be able to nurse underwater. And again, a big thank you to Tara for confirming that that does happen for us. Let's take a closer look at these Waterbuck. They're in a wonderful open clearing here, the grove of dead leadwood trees surrounding them, and all different shapes and sizes. I can see a few females who lack horns, as well as at least one big male who has his head down there on the right. A couple of helmeted guinea fowl are running behind in the background there with their bright blue heads. A wonderful scene here in front of the Arethusa camp. And again, thanks very much to the update we got earlier on, telling us about this large herd of Waterbuck, and also suggesting to go and search for the tiny baby hippo and its family members who've put on a show for us. And that was Kathleen, so thanks Kathleen for this beautiful sighting here. And it really makes me so happy that we can all interact with one another, share hints and ideas, just like the tip-off that Kathleen gave us from the Arethusa Waterhole camera. And if any of you are joining the safari for the first time, it's important to know that there are two 24-hour-a-day Waterhole cameras that survey over the Djuma Waterhole as well as the Arethusa Waterhole. So it's a great way to be able to hear the sounds of the bush and see the sights of the bush in between our drives when we're not out and about. And quite often we wake up early in the morning and have wonderful reports from you guys informing us of leopard drinking or lion drinking, heading in certain directions, which help us start on the front foot and go straight into that area to follow up and see not sure, you probably will be able to hear because the wind was blowing towards us, and that is a helmeted guinea fowl calling. Not the same ones that we're looking at, but the same type of bird. The one we can hear calling is a little bit off to our left, and the others seem to be chasing one another around wildly. They're incredibly quick, and I know I've told some of you before that they'll run the 100-meter sprints in well under Usain Bolt's time, and last time I checked he was the fastest man on earth. They would leave him in a cloud of dust, albeit a small one. It would be a cloud of dust that he would be running into. And you'll probably find that they can often run faster than they can fly, especially when taking off in thick bush and when being chased by predators, especially predatory birds. They often stay on the ground and try and run through thick bush to throw off their prey. Well, Sandra, I must thank you immensely for helping to solve the puzzle that is, how does the baby hippo suckle underwater? And apparently what happens, now this is also hard to believe, but it's making it more believable, the whole story, is that the baby hippo will flap its ears closed, close its nostrils, and go underwater having taken a deep breath. So that we kind of knew. Will then wrap its tongue around its mother's teeth. Sandra, sorry, will wrap its tongue around its mother's teeth, creating some kind of a vacuum, and then be able to drink milk without having to worry about drinking water alongside it and diluting it into a muddy milkshake. So, thank you, Sandra. And Gail's interested to know which is a safer area for Waterbuck to be in, a thick wooded area or a big open area. And most certainly a big open area. And the reason for that is that they can see their predators coming. And what you'll find is, in windy conditions like today, as well as at night time, a lot of the herbivores will seek shelter. Can sneak up on them from behind. So most of the herbivores out here will be safest in large open areas where their predators have got very little chance of creeping up on them. Waterbuck's name can be a little bit misleading because they don't rely that heavily on water. And they don't always run in. I'm gonna send you back to Jamie for an update on how her afternoon's coming along, and slowly keep meandering our way towards the line, and we'll be sure to let you know when we're getting a little bit closer.
Scott makes his way back towards the lines, we've come upon some glorious impala in the sunset light, looking absolutely beautiful. I'm not getting too close to them because the wind is making everything a little bit nervous here. You can see every now and again one of them just startles. That female on the left is intently looking in one direction, but we've just come from there, so I think it's in her imagination. But just look at those enormous bellies. Those poor ladies look like they are just about ready to pop. Look at that bulge. If you start looking carefully, if we get lucky, you might even start to see angles poking out where the little impala fetuses are poking elbows into mom. And apparently the one on the left shares the problem of many pregnant women. Hey girl. Amazing to think how agile they remain, even with those enormously big bellies. Must add a fair percentage onto their body weight. They're still capable of incredible feats of agility, and soon, very, very soon, we can start to look forward to the births of little impala. They're just going to pop up in the space, the seasonal and the weather conditions. Now, it's an animal that we see a great deal while we are out driving. Animal that we see a great deal while we are out driving out and about, easily the most numerous antelope, so quite often overlooked. But just look at how extraordinary that color shows up. And the name rooibok, in Afrikaans redbuck, becomes so clear. There's the big ram standing guard over his ewes. Breeding herd. Wagging. And one really, really angry elephant somewhere off in that direction. We're going to go that way and see if we can find them. I did see tracks coming down earlier. I think they might be hanging around there. I'm not sure if you heard that. It's a very typical baby sound. It's usually the babies that scream like that. They make that, I'm very unimpressed with life, whether it's because they're being bullied by an older sibling or whether it's because they're begging mom for milk. Moment so we can have a look at the impala as they move away, and we're going to try and get a look at those beautiful black patches on the back of their legs. And Andra Marie, you were wondering about what those are for, and they've actually got little glands there, and I've heard a couple of different theories as to what those glands are for. But one of the most common ones, the most commonly believed ones, is that they excrete a certain scent from those glands hidden under the black tufts of hair. And that serves as a way of helping them follow each other whenever they're involved in a chase situation. So you can imagine how confusing it must be when a lion launches itself at them and they themselves as an easy target. The other thing we must always remember with black highlights on most animals is that obviously animals can't talk, so there's certain visual communication aids. The most important of those are the backs of the ears and the areas around the tail, which is what you'll see highlighted clearly on the impala. But I wouldn't be surprised if the back of the legs is also quite a useful way. display of either exuberance or just giving a demonstration as to how full of energy and strong they're feeling, which is where they do their incredible jumps and handstands. And I think that the black can also serve as quite a nice way of highlighting.
Elephant.
There's an elephant.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the elephant? I've had to remove my cap due to him. Very well done. I had absolutely no idea there was an elephant there. Wow. The wildebeest strikes again with his incredible... Hello, Ellie. Okay. Let's shift and see if we can get a little bit closer to this Ellie. Trying to work out if it's a couple of them. Must be, because that's quite a time. Is actually moving quite fast. We'll try and catch up with. Hello, Ellie. And as it happens, we are making our way towards the answer to my quiz. Now, we had a lot of guesses coming through, including monitor tracks and lion's tails, but quite a few of you got it right, so very well done. I was actually a bit of a trick question because both of those. A big well done to Susie, Crystal, James and Gerda. You got the quiz absolutely right. It was an elephant's trunk, at least one of them was. Hello, boy. Can I come say hello? Ah, girl, breeding herd. Hello, girl. All right, in that case, we shall stop here for one moment. Another girl. Nicely. All right, girl. Okay, I hear you. I hear you. I'm not coming any closer. We're just talking about you and the tracks that you leave. I promise you I'll back up, girl. Calm down. Nothing to be too concerned about. She's just letting me know that she's keeping an eye on her family. And especially on windy days like today, they're just a little bit more nervous than usual. Look at my girl. See that head up, ears out posture? It's a very, very clear sign from her. I know, girl. I know. Okay. All right, girl. Okay, well, we're not going to be moving just at this moment. We'll let the rest of the herd move around us. Since she's given us a very, very clear message. Since she's given us a very, very clear message. Incredible spot from the wildebeest and Gerda. We have now met a wildebeest with eagle eyes, and we have him to now met a wildebeest with eagle eyes, and we have him to thank for our elephant sighting. More noises coming from in there. Eye. I'm going to let her get a little bit further before we go any closer. There she goes. To be joined by this afternoon we are lucky enough once again to be joined by Miss Puthoff's class, who are watching all the way from Missouri, and it's the 4th grade class, and talking about elephants pushing over trees, as we can see. Now, Isabel, you want to amazing memories. They're very long-lived creatures. They can live up to 60 years old, maybe even 65 for a really old elephant. And their memories last all the way through that. And not only can they remember, but they can learn as well, which is why they have such incredibly intense emotional connections between members. But females, especially the matriarchs of the herds, because you know that elephants are led by the older females, one in particular, who is known as the matriarch. And she will remember, even if she was a young calf, where her mother might have taken her to go and drink water in times of drought, and she will return to that spot. They are incredible creatures. 40 years later, they can remember what's happened to them and what they've experienced. It's a great thing being out of their trunks, just to clear the odd obstruction. That's the sound you might have heard. There's an elephant just through here, digging away. Here he comes, or there she comes. Hello.
Welcome back, everyone. And the lions have literally just got back here onto the remains of this buffalo carcass. There's not making the most of whatever little scraps they can nibble on. And isn't this interesting? Bush, just keeping me company, and it might actually almost be worth having a look at. We also parked at a very strange angle, and this is my bushy friend over here to my right, keeping me company, so all is well. But let's not focus on me. Of chewing and pulling, as well as licking. Their tongues are incredibly rough, almost like sandpaper, and they'll be using their tongue to try and scrape off whatever little bits of protein they can. I'm not sure where the other two are. I'm guessing not too far away. And in this windy weather, they're going to be a little bit cautious. They are way out of their home territory and around a kill. Decided to abandon whatever scraps are here, although maybe this young male isn't quite finished yet. We're in a very tricky spot, so... Oh, welcome back. And not only the lioness, but also the male has returned. And we've just got a question through from Donna, and she remembers seeing one of these young males with a wound, and she remembers seeing one of these young males with a wound on its rear end, and we did see it this morning. It does appear to be on the mend. One of the animals are, wild animals at least, are incredibly tough and resilient, and unless a wound is incredibly deep and in a vital area, they tend to survive. Isn't this wonderful? Look at the way his claws are coming out as he tries to grip onto this leg bone. And you can see the fats and sinews and tendons that it will be able to get off. It's just not easy going. But there's no easier meal than a buffalo that lions had not have to kill themselves. They actually stumbled upon this yesterday afternoon, and Tingana and Karula, a male and female leopard who were mating in this area, were actually the first cats on the scene and made their way in for an easy meal. I'll be interested to know how much longer they spend here, and I guess we're in no rush to head off, so we will hopefully be able to see for ourselves. In this very windy afternoon, it's such good conditions for hunting that I thought they may be planning on doing that, but maybe they've got that planned for later on in the evening. Well, there are supposed to be 3 young males. The lioness are old, easy to distinguish. She has lost her tail. She's not right here now, but she was in the area a few moments ago. And there's also another big lioness, and a report from Londolozi, a lodge in the south, saying that possibly to start trying to win them over. And she did come into estrus, or potentially a false estrus, and was seen mating with them. And she did come into estrus, or potentially a false estrus, and was seen mating with them. So maybe she still is with the 2 Matimba males, who are 2 male lions that used to be dominant in this area before the Birmingham males came and chased them off. I just heard a vocalization, and it's from the bigger lioness, the older lioness who's just arrived. I'm fairly certain, unless I'm dreaming. And I've noticed that they've managed to clean off a little bit of the meat between the ribs, which you can see 3 of those ribs poking out. So at least the vultures have also been cashing in on this easy meal. She just took a quick glance up towards us just to make sure our vehicles weren't going to topple down on top of her, I guess. Interesting that she took a bit more of interest to us than the youngsters did. Well, Patsy, you must have just tuned in a few minutes ago. Well, Patsy, you must have just tuned in a few minutes ago, and you weren't seeing things. New Zealand's question, and we were chatting about in the southern Sabi Sands, and one of the adults of the pride then, probably a similar age to this individual now, had also lost her tail to hyena. So unfortunate pride of lion, but it doesn't seem to be affecting her health at all. She's in good condition, as was her mother. Her mother was a beautiful big lioness, possibly not her mother, maybe an aunt. And before I left, this lioness was in perfect order, or she would have been one of them. were all in perfect working order. And I'm not sure, actually I am sure. Thankfully, one of our viewers reminded me this morning, or informed me this morning, that this individual lost her tail in 2011. And that was Crystal this morning, so big thanks, and again to all of you who sent through all these interesting nuggets of information. I cannot express how grateful I am for you helping us out, and everyone else on the safari benefits greatly from it, so thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. Send information but also questions. It's really easy. You hashtag Safari Live on Twitter or send an email through to questions@wildearth.com. So feel free to let us know how you're feeling, or if there's anything you'd like to know. Well, Sarah has just mentioned that that were chased from this area by 5 young and upcoming males called the Birmingham boys. So interesting how the effects of some men, they've chased back this pride lions, but as a return they've chased back this pride of 5 or 6 individuals towards us. So a lot of turmoil, not only in the northern Sabi Sands, but it's having far-reaching effects into the south as well. Many years, and that was when the Matimba males arrived. They then managed to sneak back into their home area where the Matimba males have kind of set up shop, and then slink through further north towards where they are now. And it really is going to be fascinating to see what happens with this pride. Will they return to their home along the Sand River, or will they be able to set up a territory here? Only time will tell. But they do have the odds stacked against them. These 2 young males that you can see and their 1 brother are not in a fortunate position. They've got the 5 Birmingham males to deal with, the new dominant coalition in this area. And just like that, they're off.
Well, we go try our luck on the dance
side. Been very comfortable here, but it's certainly been worth it. And while we wait for them to free up a spot for us to get out, we can answer a question from Paula. And if the males have any other prides that they are mating with, and as far as I'm aware, yes, they're called the Mangan pride, which they've split up several times, and this Mangan pride, certain members of it have been seen mating with the Matimbas, as far as I'm aware. So I could be wrong, but naturally in any territory there will be some females. So the Matimba males still have their job to do, creating a few more generations, and they are just setting up a new area in which well, off-roading that we're about to go through, we're going to send you across to Jamie.
I think there we go, look at that, watch this. Now he's going to stick his trunk in his mouth, I would say. You going to do that for us, boy? No. He's obviously not smelling interesting enough. That was him testing her scent to see if she's possibly ready to mate. And quite often what they do after they do that is they put the trunk into the roof of their mouth, because elephants can't phlegm and grimace in the same way that you might have seen other animals do. And for those of you who don't know what I mean, if you ever see, especially horses, if you've been horse riding and you see them curl up their top lip, that is known as a phlegm and grimace, and it's a way of helping them pull scents into the top of their mouth and essentially tasting what they're smelling. I'm not too sure we'd get one. There he's going to do exactly the same thing. Met with some, well, I would say that was pretty much the cold shoulder from that cow. Now, elephant bulls, although the females dominate the herd in terms of choosing where they go, males around. Now this young male is just still tasting. While we look for a better visual, the lions have gone off to drink. Oh, sweet. So let's head across to Scott, and I will catch up with you a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone, and look at what a beautiful sight this is. Out in the open now, all 5 of them. The oldest and most wise member of this pride as it stands, the older lion, far away from her home territory. And she may well do. They're not incredibly full-bellied. They're on this cool evening. She may have some plans, and not only a cool evening, a windy evening, perfect for hunting. Yeah, You must definitely shake your head and get all that mud off your chin. No, she's clearly not interested in hunting just yet. That may be something wonderful. And it looks like another lioness has decided to come join. As I was saying there, we only move one vehicle at a time, and that's just an example of how we try and impact as little as possible the lions or the animals that we're viewing. And obviously by moving one vehicle at a time, it's just less ambient noise for them to worry about, less action. So we're just going to let for him to get into a spot, and then we will reposition into a bed. They have noticed that these lions are not looking in good condition at all, and they're wondering whether it is an effect of the fact that they're no longer in their home territory, they're not as safe as they used to be, so maybe they don't have as much time to groom themselves. And I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think that's because they have been in a few scraps and possibly not been very successful. I think it's necessarily what is an indirect result of the chaos that they've been going through, but it's not that they don't have enough time to groom themselves. There certainly will be enough time for them to groom, but I think they may have just had bigger problems to deal with. Just going to swivel around quickly now. And we've got a great observation through from they can often be quite aggressive with one another and growl and scratch and claw, but this instance, when we saw them a little bit earlier, they were feeding quite peacefully, and you entirely correct, Cameron. It's maybe because there wasn't too much food to fight over. If there had have been some more big pieces of tasty buffalo meat, they may have been more likely to fight with one another, but like you say, this time we got lucky. There was no real aggression shown between them, and now they're all continuing to be friendly with one another. You can see the young male has now joined the two lionesses, and it may well not be too long before the other two males join. It might be worth taking a look at the other two males. They are busy doing what we just spoke about, and distances, bigger than they would normally use, burning up energy, losing precious reserves, and maybe that's why they're looking a little bit worse for wear at the moment. Certainly not anything drastic, or we don't need to be concerned for their well-being, but it is important to note that they are not in the best condition. This one, you can see he's got a wound right on his spine there, on the center of his spine, close to where he's licking. And the other one also has a wound on its spine, closer to its tail. Surprising that he may manage to escape with just that little flesh wound. And maybe it was the tailless female and the other large lioness that came thundering into his rescue. And maybe we'll see his appreciation for this lioness as he marches towards her now. Is he going to show her some affection? Yep. Isn't it wonderful how they can really be so with other animals? With other animals. Now I'm guessing it's not going to be too long before the third and final male starts feeling left out, so we may as well head across to him, or spot that he wants to clean. This one might be the one with the injury around his tail, because it looks like he's trying to lick it and keep it clean. So we'll keep a very close eye out when this one walks past us. He may well be the one around the tail area when it was obviously looking a little bit more gruesome, but this morning it didn't look too serious at all. And happy to hear that Sarah in New York is, and happy to hear that Sarah in New York has just been feeding on is the same buffalo that Tingana and Karula were feeding on a few days back. And actually yesterday afternoon these lions chased Karula up a tree. Tingana ran off. Look, this is the one with the wound. Again during the course of the day, but nothing too serious. It's just below the skin, but I think he has licked it open. All of these young males are lucky to have got away with their lives after being attacked by the Matimba males, who are probably 3 times hairy manes. Hunting to go and look for some fresh buffalo. I'm not sure when last this lioness did have cubs, but her nipples are very, very evident as she rolls over there, so it's a sign that she certainly has given birth in the past. But according to the update that I read today, it doesn't sound like they did lose any cubs to the Matimba males, and it's obviously just a trait of hers that they are very easy to see, those little black nipples. Sometimes it's not as clearly visible even. And the lions just lay down at that wound. You can see it's not very deep, and it looks nice and clean. Doesn't look like there's any serious infection or anything going on there. And I've seen lion recover from far worse injuries. And wouldn't it have been funny if this lion also had have lost its tail? Then it would have been two tailless lion within the pride. It got close to losing its life, I guess, and its tail, but it got away with both. Have taken the lion's tail, and it's a good question, Isabella, but what I'm guessing would have happened is that maybe this lioness who lost her tail was alone, and what would have happened is a large clan of hyena would have come in. Maybe she had some food that they tried to steal, and she would have always tried to keep her teeth and her front paws towards the hyena, but if there's too many of them, some would have been attacking her from behind as she fought off the other hyena who were attacking her from the front. And if she was outnumbered, they would have attacked from the least dangerous end, which is the tail and the rump, and hyena that would be able to bite off a lion's tail with relative ease. And they probably weren't aiming just to take the tail, they probably would have tried to kill her, but thankfully they only got her tail and she could run off without any serious injuries. It's always important to remember that even though lion are bigger than hyena and may often chase hyena, okay, well, we're going to send you across to Jamie for a quick update on what she's up to, and because there is a queue of different vehicles wanting to come to the sighting, we may have to leave temporarily and then hopefully be able to come back in later, but it's important that we don't overstay our welcome here. There's a lot of people that are wanting to come here, so I'll try and work that out while you're gone, but for now, over to Jamie.
We are still with our wonderful elephant herd. I was just ducking out of the way there so that you could see this female who's been with us the whole time. She's been rumble, and they came to investigate whatever it was that she had to say. And then the slightly larger female on the left came and fed next to her for a while, nibbled around, walked right in front the car like we weren't even there. It is such a privilege to be able to sit with a nice relaxed herd of elephants, even in this howling wind. Hello, little one. You're coming to have a sniff. We have another question from Mrs. Pathoff's class. It's a really difficult question to answer. It's an enormous amount. Just to roughly give you an idea, the area that we're in is open to the Kruger National Park. So the enormous game reserve that is around 2 million hectares worth of land, concessions and areas around the Kruger that's open to it. It creates an area that's about 2.7, 2.8 million hectares worth of lands. It's 2 million soccer fields. Think of it as a football. About 14,000 elephants. In terms of elephant herds, let's say they average at about anything from about 6 or 7 right up until about 15 to 20 individuals. Typically have, although it can be large and it can change, they can hang out in very similar areas. And they're often the elephant herds in one area, not more often than not, but there's a higher possibility that they might be related to each other, because once an elephant herd becomes big, then they split off, and you find often neighboring herds or herds that are moving around at least in the same area. None of the elephants, neither the herds, the breeding herds, nor the bulls are territorial, so they don't defend territories, and when they do interact, it's peaceful. It's not like lions where there might be a bit of conflict in between them. They might even go up and say hello. I've seen it happen a great deal, because elephants are such complex creatures and they have such complex social systems that if you watch 2 elephant herds, they'll... Oh, baby's shouting. Not sure what he's shouting at. Slowly. I think that's a begging calf. It is a begging calf, and it's a little bit too big to be drinking, but Mommy's going to allow it anyway. That was what those shrieks were all about. It is a little boy, and he's pressured Mom into allowing him to drink. Typically they'll drink up until about 2 years old, where they can become fully independent on solid food, but they will be supplementing with solid food from about 6 months. They can start to chew and eat grass and leaves and imitate their moms, but they have been recorded feeding right up until 8 years old. In rare occasions that they don't fall pregnant again, and they continue to She's rumbling at him. You can even see he started to get his tusks. Maybe about 3.5. I was answering the question about herds interacting. They're complex creatures, elephants. They'll come together, they'll be friendly, they'll investigate each other. Quite often the young ones will go and play together. I've seen it happen quite a few times. The only of one of the males, but it's very, very unusual. It's only when they're particularly matched in size and strength. But that is pretty much the only time that elephants will have a really serious conflict with each other. That's not to say they don't have skirmishes and disagreements. It does happen as well. Hello, Elias. Sometimes you just have to beat it off. Here that Scott has once again, with his own eagle eyes, spotted that Scots owl once again. So let's head across to him and I'll be back with you a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. Take a closer look at this. It's a bird that a lot of you would have never seen before, a new one for the bird list. The African Scots owl, and you came just in time because it has fluttered off and I'm not too sure where it went. Somebody's just trying to get a hold of me on the radio quickly, so I'm not too sure if Jamie is still with the elephants, but I'm just going to start chatting with this guy. Go ahead. Negative, I was just viewing a Scots owl and I'm not really in the lock, but I'm leaving now. Okay, so it was all happening there. I couldn't hear Nikki's commands from final control. I was getting shouted at by the guides because there were too many people close to the line, but I think we are in the clear to go.
Sorry about that. You are back with us once again. And we're still with our Ellies now. I'm only going to spend the next few moments with them because we are rapidly losing light and I definitely don't want to sit with any kind of spotlight on them. They're daytime animals. They don't like it. It makes them uncomfortable. It disrupts their evening. So we'll leave them be very shortly. At the moment, though, I'm just going to let them come through. We've separated, not separated, but they've separated themselves, the mother and her young calf. And I don't want to go and push between them and put us between them and the rest of the herd, although she's perfectly comfortable with us. It's just a matter of respect. I don't think she'd be too stressed out, but I'd rather just let her make that decision herself, particularly with her calf. She seems quite content as she's munching on a bush willow that's, interestingly, that plant that she's feeding on has already been targeted by elephants before. Look at the way that the main stem has been pushed over. And trees out here are so cleverly resilient. Look at all of the vertical limbs growing up from it. Now, of course, they have to be adapted to survive, or at least be better equipped to survive an elephant assault. This one's retained its roots and has started coppicing up vertically. Oh, Mom wants something underneath the dead branch. Shifting it away. And there's her young boy who's doing all the begging. Hey, boy. His tusks are tiny. Oh. Enormous tusks. And Luke, who is also a member of the 4th grade class that's watching, you wanted to know how long it takes, or how long an elephant's tusks can get. And the answer to that is absolutely enormous, easily double my height. I'm about 5'7", and I've seen tusks that I would probably be able to lie twice against, and they'd be as long as, and they weigh up to, I think the heaviest on record in the Kruger National Park was somewhere in the region of 74, 75 kilograms, which is absolutely enormous. That's far more than me. That's about 150 odd pounds. Incredibly big. That's just one tusk, not even both. There are records of them within the Kruger. If you go to Letaba Camp in Kruger National Park, they have a record or a museum of the Magnificent Seven. And Luke, I'm going to keep telling you about this whilst I leave these elephants. Let's drive and see what else we can find. They are absolutely because over the last few centuries, those elephants with big tusks are the ones that were targeted by poachers. So the genetics that favor large tusked elephants are slowly dying out. But they'll still be there, and I'm sure it's something that can recover. Sorry, Dave. Do a little bit of investigation for the nocturnal creatures. There was a typically nocturnal creature that was actually a daytime creature that we saw yesterday. That both Donna and Kathleen might have missed. So you guys were asking what the name of that exquisite daytime moth was that we saw yesterday on the sunset safari, in between all of the action between the leopards and the lions. And the answer is that it was a fire grid burnet moth. Something I had no idea existed. Absolutely incredible proposal by the viewers, and something I'm incredibly grateful for because I won't ever forget it now. That being said, I did read the Latin name earlier and I forgot about it, or I've forgotten it. I'll have to write it down and say it's moth, a daytime moth. Not something that I found in any of my books, but I think I need to get a more comprehensive. But it's one of the things I love, of course, I've said it before, is the learning experience that I get to have being out here and actually learning from all of you. I'm so impressed that viewers managed to find what that moth was. Really, I am. Just as impressed as I was with that thin marbled lichen moth from a couple of weeks before. Bright, shiny green, almost fluorescent green and red combination moth. Almost looks like Christmas in a moth, if that makes sense. My eyes peeled, of course, as always, but for new viewers, I'm looking for the reflection of eye shine. So all animals have what's known as a tapetum lucidum layer at the back of their eye. So right at the back by the retina, tapetum lucidum layer at the back of their eye. So right at the back by the retina, and at area, and it allows them to enhance their night vision. Now the diurnal animals have it, but it doesn't work as well as the nocturnal animals have it, or the ones that the nocturnal animals have. And it bounces my spotlight that I'm waving about, possibly like this, just to give James a little bit of a show, since he did happen to demonstrate it the other day. But it's something that I'm trying to get reflected back into my spotlight. Our regular viewers will know, but some of our new viewers may not, that we have been going through quite a dry period over the last few months. And yesterday, James and Jandre did a spectacular rendition of what they claimed was a rain dance. And Thada, you were wondering if it brought any rain last night. And the answer is, despite the fact that the winds blew and the clouds were threatening, by the time we got back to camp, the clouds looked as though it was going to. We'll wait and see. Maybe it will rain tonight, and then maybe there's some kind of delay effect on rain dances. Take a while to build up. I will say that it's snowing. I will say that it is snowing in parts of Salala. It's a little bit odd. I don't remember the last time it snowed in the mountains in November. It's not going to snow here. That would really be odd. Then I think I'd be slightly concerned. But for it to be snowing on the mountains in the beginning of November is quite surprising. But jokes aside, it does seem as though South Africa's been exposed to some very interesting weather conditions recently. And I know that a lot of experts have been talking about the fact that we're probably going to be facing a drought this year. not the case, obviously, but it has been incredibly dry. Every thunderstorm that has threatened while I've been back at work, at least, I know there was a little bit of rain whilst I was gone, but every thunderstorm that's threatened has just blown whilst I was gone. But every thunderstorm that's threatened has just does also mean, if that happens, that if we see any dead animal carcasses that look to be unexplained, you'll see us start to pay a little bit more attention. Probably won't be touching them at all if it continues to be as dry as it has been, just because typically droughts do associate with anthrax outbreaks. So now cautious of. There's a bush baby there. Let's see if we can get it. He's still to the center of your screens. Oops, sorry, I did a bit of a wobble. There he goes. He's up, standing on his legs. Oh, where'd he go? Have you got him? Yes, there he is. I can see his head. Check. That was an absolutely enormous jump. Well, I do hope you saw him in that brief, rather brief bush baby sighting. I'm glad that was actually a bush baby, because yesterday I saw some eye shine quite high up. Thought it was a giraffe, and thought it was a bush baby, and it turned out to be a giraffe, which was a little bit embarrassing. But you know, these things happen. Mistakes get made. Subtle difference between a tiny bush baby and a big giraffe. I think actually Karen's put her finger on it. It was not a... I regret it, but that is what has happened. Now, I'm one of those people who gets slightly unsettled by wind. I'm not sure if any of the viewers feel the same way that I do. And for good reason, walking in the bush when it's windy can be quite a dangerous experience. Your ears are compromised. But just generally, my entire life, I've kind of, whenever the wind blows, I feel slightly, at the very least, restless and unsettled. We got to see the bush baby though. Definitely one of the cutest little nocturnal. Phenomenal. I've forgotten the exact measurement, but they can definitely launch themselves a good 10 or so times their body height into the air if they need to. as we cruise along, we have a new viewer who's been to know if I've ever seen a rhino, and I have. I actually spent, in my previous job, I spent quite a good portion of my time tracking the whole working in the wildlife industry idea. I was 8 years old, I think. I might even be young. No, I must have been 8 because my brother had just been born. And we took a trip down to a place called the Rhino Camp, and I got to look at the rhinos in the sanctuary and go walking with wild rhino. And I had the most amazing time, and they became my favorite animal at that point. So an animal that I've spent a great deal of time with. I've seen a week-old calf in the wild before on foot. They're very special. They've also been responsible for one or two, probably to not show them to viewers. We avoid them, and we avoid showing any signs of them, just because poaching is a network that extends far beyond just the average poacher in a village, and it goes into industries that are worth multi-million dollars, and we don't want to make their lives any easier by exposing the rhino. So it's something that very special creatures and very interesting creatures, and certainly as capable of complex behavior as other animals out here. Highly entertaining creatures when they want to be. You wouldn't believe it, but one of the coolest things that rhino do is they, especially the calves, but it's the most incredible thing to see. It is literally like they are dancing. I'm sure if you head out into the internet and have a look around, you'll find plenty of examples of videos of them. Definitely an animal that I would hold responsible, almost, somewhat famed for being placid white rhino compared to the aggressive black rhino, and for the most part that's not entirely true, or it's not entirely fair, especially because, or it's heightened by, or it's not entirely fair, especially because, or it's heightened by the way that those animals are structured. They can feed off the leaves on the trees, and as a result it just makes them look just that little bit cockier, because it's like that elephant look where they look at you down their trunk. It's the same thing. They've got their heads up, and that's exactly how they look at you. That apparently is brought by James and Jandre's dance. I'm currently trundling my way along through the bush. Whoops, I think I've found a bush. And we'll detach the passenger that's underneath my car and head back to Scott, who's also doing a night drive, and I'll see you a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone, and you arrived at a bad time, because you may have seen a large grey blob in the road ahead of us, and that was an elephant. night, although if I just get the dims on, we may be able to creep up a little bit closer. I'm not going to shine closing this vent, they can regulate the temperature extremely well. Often you'll actually see birds sitting on the entrances to these chimneys in the early morning, hoping to get the warm on soldiers yet, but they're obviously off running other errands. I can't see them. And I'm told you can see a few very, very small ants around the outskirts. I can't see them. I can't watch the monitor and show things, because without these incredibly important termites, there'd be a huge wastage of minerals and a huge amount of dead plant matter, which would suffocate new growth coming through. It would prevent new growth being able to push up through the earth, stealing precious sunlight from them. So even though they're very small and we don't get to see them often, they are incredibly important. What can I see crawling off the bottom? Is that a scorpion coming out there? But hard to work out exactly what it is. But happy to hear you on safari with us at the same time. Good multitasking. Tim's interested to know what and how much will the female feed on. I don't know. She'll feed on the same food as the rest of the clan, the broken down fungus deposits. And she's a large grub. She's an egg-laying machine. She's not mobile. She's encased in a small little royal chamber. Her food gets brought to her. Her eggs get carried away from her, and she is immobile. So she lives a life of luxury, simply with her main role giving birth, or laying eggs rather, to make sure that she's got enough workers to maintain this massive, massive colony. You may have seen all the termites simultaneously start drumming their heads there. That's quite typical behavior of them, obviously communicating with one another. Keep looking closely. They seem to be in a bit of a drumming mood now. Anyway, sadly, it is time to wrap things up here from our side, and I would like to say goodbye to all of you and thank you for all of your help and contributions. It's been great fun, and you can look forward to James and Jamie taking you out on an adventure tomorrow morning. Otherwise, I'll be on board in the afternoon. Thanks Tebs, thanks Jandre, thanks to the ladies in the final control room. Over to Jamie.
And a very quick farewell from myself, and a big thank you to VM and to all of you guys. Have a wonderful evening or a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and we'll catch you tomorrow for the sunrise safari. Bye bye for now.